My name's David and I'm an addict. And welcome. It's really great to see this kind of a turnout. Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Good. Can you hear me in the front? All right. Okay. This is really quite an event, and the turnout was even more than I anticipated, although I was warned that it was going to be pretty good today. What we're celebrating here today is the 50th anniversary of the arrival of the Little White Book of Narcotics Anonymous in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Wow. Okay? That's pretty huge. And it happened, of course, right here at Eagleville, and we had them pull out the portrait of the man who was really responsible for allowing us to find a home here in 1969. That's Dr. Donald Ottenburg. And not everyone here would have reason to know the history of this place, but he was the medical director here for a long time. And so I'll hit a little bit of the history of Eagleville, and as well as I'm recording there too. As well as the history of NA and how these two things came together, this healing place of Eagleville Hospital and this healing force that found its way back from the West Coast in the form of a book called the Little White Book. So let me just give you a little history of NA, and there's no way to state it without some element of controversy, but the first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous was held in New York City at the Women's House of Correction, or Women's House of Correction? Detention. They weren't yet corrected, they were just detained. Women's House of Detention in New York City. And that was taken in there by a fellow named Danny Carlson. And Danny Carlson was an addict who had lived in New York and sought treatment 8 times at Lexington, Kentucky, the Public Health Service Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. And on the grounds of Lexington, from about 1946 on, there was a meeting of a group called Addicts Anonymous that was started by a guy named Houston. And Danny goes in there on his 8th visit in 1949, and that's the trip that worked for him. So he goes back home and he wants to start a fellowship. He wants to spread the word and figures that, he doesn't want to have the same initials as AA, so he wants it different from Addicts Anonymous, and he chooses the name Narcotics Anonymous. Meetings flourished very slowly in New York City, and there's a lot of historical material available about the fellowship at that time. He dies in 1956, and then suffice it to say that NA kind of shifts to the West Coast in the early 50s. And the first publication of what became the Little White Book was actually called the Buff Book, and it was published in 1957 in Soledad Prison. And it had, I think it was only like 8 pages long, and it had a little brief compendium of what NA was all about. The version, I believe, Dan, would have been published in 1962 that ended up here in 1969. And a guy named Roy P. I just listened to, we did this on the 40th, and I just listened to the tape last night and this morning. And our first 2 speakers are no longer with us, Bobby M. and Roy P. And Roy was out in the West Coast in 1969, and he went to an AA convention, and he let it be known that his problem was drugs. And some people guided him to a group of addicts who were kind of involved in this startup fellowship called Narcotics Anonymous, and one of them was Jimmy K. And they gave him a number of books to bring back to the East Coast. And so Roy gets back here and approaches a number of churches to try to find a place to start an NA meeting. And the doors were closed in his face. He knew a therapist who worked here. His name was Dick F. And Dick had gotten sober in a young men's club in Philadelphia. And he arranged a meeting between Roy and Dr. Ottenburg. And the first time that they met, Dr. Ottenburg didn't respond in any official way. And Roy was about to give up on it, and Danny said, let's take another run at Dr. Ottenburg. So they met with Dr. Ottenburg, and Dr. Ottenburg said, we're going to give you a place. Well, how important is that? I listened to Bob, a tape that I did with Bob M. last night as well. And I did that, I guess, 3 months before he died. And he talks about being up here in 1969. He was here for 40 days and went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting in a small room at the main hospital building. That's pretty incredible. And if you know anything about the history of NA, it just wasn't anywhere else but here in Southern California. So I think that we're pretty blessed. And just briefly, Eagleville was initially founded in 1909. It was a hospital for tuberculosis patients. In fact, my grandfather was a patient here in the mid-20s for TB. And in 1966, the government pulled their funding for TB because they weren't treating it the way they used to, where people would come up here and stay for a year or two. And they were treating it with medication. They were starting to have some success. And Dr. Ottenburg, was left with the dilemma. He was the medical director. What are we going to do with this great facility? And he got the idea to make it a treatment center for alcoholics. And he, through his own initiative, and he really had to push against a lot of resistance, convinced the board of directors to admit alcoholics here in 1966. I think it was June of 1966. They unloaded their first bus of 18 patients from the Diagnostic and Relocation Center down in Philadelphia. In 1968, 69, he gets another brainstorm and he says, we're starting to hear about drug problems. Drugs are now becoming quite a problem. It was part of the culture, and it started out kind of recreationally, but it was pretty quickly devolving into a very widespread public health crisis, really, for young people getting involved in drugs. So he put together the idea that let's treat drug addicts and alcoholics in the same program. And that's what he did. He again went back to the board and was able to convince them to do so. So as a result, it was rather fertile ground here for him to say, yeah, let's give this Narcotics Anonymous a shot. So that's what we're here today celebrating. I'm going to give you the format. First of all, there's no smoking anywhere on campus. That includes outside. I don't know about vaping. I honestly don't know if they consider that smoking or not. But maybe in solidarity with your smoking brothers, you vapors can just not vape for 2 hours. Give that a shot. There are no photographs, even though I don't believe there are any patients in the room. If you're going to do photographs, please be up against the wall so there aren't pictures that capture anybody who's in the background. We don't want to violate HIPAA or any of the federal regulations dealing with patient confidentiality. Oh, good time. Perfect. Would everybody mind silencing their cell phones? Thank you. Time. Addicts like to talk, as you've seen over the last 5 minutes. And we have to have a time limit here today. The time limit is 7 minutes. Because what? Yeah. Well, it's 7 minutes. This, by the way, timekeeper is here. Her name is Lynne. Her last initial is V. And wait. Lynne is from New York, by way of Queens. And all I can tell you is she has a lot of vowels in her last name. All right? That's a warning.
Yes.
At 5 minutes, you're going to hear. Okay. At 7 minutes, she's going to go like this. And where she comes from, that has a whole different meaning, okay? So don't even try to be up here longer than 7 minutes. No filming and no recording. We are making a recording right now, and my goal is to have one usable copy of this that we can put out on the internet and people can access it. One of the problems we always run into is that people, especially when it comes to two brothers who were very involved in the early fellowship, Mike and Danny, for some reason everybody gets soft and gives us their last names. If you use last names, and I don't care whether they're alive or dead, please don't. Just don't use last names because I don't know how to edit anything. I barely know how to turn this thing on. But there's a little sign up here that says no last names. Okay, so please don't use last names. What else do we have? Okay, so what we're going to do is proceed by 5-year blocks of time. That would be 69 to 74. then 74 to 79, 79 to 84, and then if we get to it, 85 to 89. And I hope we do. You don't have to use 7 minutes, by the way. It's not in the format. If you sit down at 3 or 4 minutes, we're not going to call you back up here and say you have another 3 minutes. And if anybody says, I'm going to say this and then shut it down, we know what that means. You got another 10 minutes in you. We're not having it. Okay, there are a few items just for your, to look at up here, historically significant. I'm not endorsing those. NA is not endorsing those, but they're pretty interesting references to NA on the East Coast, including in this book, kind of the most comprehensive history of NA, and he writes extensively about the Philadelphia region in the 70s. So with that, I believe that we're ready to throw it open. Again, 5-year blocks of time. So, and we're going to do it chronologically. If you this is critical. This is not about clean time. If you were in here in 69 and you were exposed to NA and you have something to say about it, please do. The fact that you went out and came back at a later date in the 70s or 80s, that's fine. This is not only for clean time. Does everybody understand that? If your exposure to NA occurred between 69 and 74, come up and tell us about it. What did you like about it? What was different about it? What didn't you like about it? We can handle that too. Whatever your experience was with Narcotics Anonymous. So with that, we're going to throw it open to anyone here whose exposure was between the years 1969 and 1974.
I'm an act named Harry. So in early August 1969, my mother thought I had a problem. So she was looking for a place for me to go, and she heard about this place, and they were doing wonders with heroin addiction. So she made a phone call, and I think it was like either the 13th or the 14th of August that she got a call, and they had a bed open. Eagleville Hospital had a bed open for me. I said to my mother, let me have that phone because me and my friends are going to a little jazz concert in New York and I can't go in right away. And they said, well, listen, we have a bed for you. If you want it, it's yours. If you don't, we'll see you when you get around. So I said, okay, and I went in, and that little jazz festival turned out to be Woodstock. But I was only in here for about 2 weeks, and I caught hepatitis A or B from a dirty needle and went into convulsions, and they had to take an ambulance to Abington Hospital, and I was in quarantine for a couple of weeks there. So I wasn't here long, but the time I was here, they planted a seed. I was at that meeting that Roy brought here. So they planted a seed for me, and even though I wasn't ready, it took me 37 years to get back here, it planted a seed, and I want to thank Roy, Eagleville Hospital, and everybody included for that.
Hey, Denny, South Philly. I'm only Denny. Hello, everyone. Dennis D. I was admitted to Eagleville on January 19th of 1972 at the age of 19 after getting thrown off the methadone clinic at Broad-Morris. Eagleville had something called NA that was here. There was AA here, and guys from AA would come up in suits from all their home groups, and me, I was a troublemaker and started, didn't believe anything, and NA came up and they looked more like me, and I started to listen. I had a hard time with the concept that they didn't do anything, I kept on questioning them, but I listened. But the most important thing from my exposure in NA during 1972, Eagleville here had a long-term program called the Candidate Program. And it was a 6-month program that followed your inpatient. And at our clinic, Eagleville's clinic in Norristown, there was an NA meeting, which later became the Green Street meeting. But it was first at the clinic. And it was this woman, Jennifer L., took a few of us in the candidate program to that meeting. And there was Carl, and there was Ralph, and there was Bobby Mack, your brother, and you know, just a crew of guys which were the basis of that NA group, and that was my real exposure, because you know, the institutional meeting was great, but that meeting out there gave me a vision of men and a few women who were actually living in the community and making it, and they all had a couple of years, and I believed in it. Believed in it with all my heart, that if I didn't go back to Pollock Street, you know, downtown, that I could make it by staying up here and doing this thing with NA. Life had problems, and there were some things that went on, but I won't get into that. That's my exposure, and I stayed with it as time went on. Thank you.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm an alcoholic and addict, and my name's Jim B. I generally say my last name so that people know who I am and they can look me up out there, but since Dave gave those instructions, I'm going to abide by it, even though I've been a rebel all my life. My introduction to Narcotics Anonymous and, quite frankly, Eagleville Hospital was in December of 1969. I was a 17-year-old drug addict, alcoholic, in and out of prisons, ended up here. Quite frankly, I can't tell you a whole lot about what the NA meetings were about. I can't tell you what the AA meetings were about. I can't even tell you what the group stuff was about, because I had no sense of recovery on my mind at that time. I was trying to beat some charges, and I was trying to get back out on the streets as quick as I could, which I recall as I drove in, and I see there's a fence out there now along the drive, but somewhere in that time period, going in late December into early January, I trekked out across a muddy cornfield to head back down to Norristown, my hometown. Of course, I went back there for the drinking and drugs. I bounced around for a few years before, again, finding trouble with the law. I ended up in Graterford for a couple of years, and I guess that brings me up to December of '73. Through a stroke of luck and some help from people in this program here, my brother, who has been mentioned a couple of different times, they got me on some kind of crazy pre-release program, and I ended up in the hallways of the old hospital building over here. I looked down the hallway one day to the candy machine at the end of the hall, and there was a big redhead kid that I knew from Norristown down there, which happened to be Dave F. We struck up a renewed friendship because we had both gone to the same high school. Through a series of events, my brother, who had been persistent at trying to 12-step me, came up to the hospital and asked the guy one final time. My brother always turns me down to go to a meeting. What should I do? And the guy says, give him another try. You never know if it'll work out for him. So in my guile, I bartered with my brother. I said, yeah, I would go to an outside meeting with him if he took my big red-headed friend. And he did. He agreed to it. We went to an AA meeting on the outside first. Then we went down to 13th and Ruscombe, one of the first outside meetings I'd ever been to, an NA meeting. They mentioned 1208 Green Street. When Dave and I were here, that meeting was kind of defunct. And with the help of 2 or 3 other people, Dave and I and my good friend John, sitting back there, restarted the 1208 Green Street. So I've been around this program for a while, and I tell you, it's a great success. I came here, I didn't want to be recovered. I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted the police to stop hounding me. I wanted everybody in my family to stop saying, don't you love us, and can't you do this? I wanted all that to stop. I didn't want to stop using or stop drinking, but those things I did want to stop. And through the help of a higher power and the NANA program, that has stopped. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen M. Hi, alcoholic addict. I'm really nervous, so I thought I would just tell what I remember. I came in June of '71, homeless, sick, and my mother, who was in Al-Anon, talked to some people. I got in today, incorporated, and I lasted 2 days at today because I couldn't get up and do the chores. Back then, you worked your butt off in these places. And, I turned yellow as a canary. I had hepatitis. I had been sick out there for a while. I had been homeless. So, long story short, my mother agreed to take me back in until I got better. And so one of her friends in Al-Anon had a guy from AA come after work every day, real nice guy, Denny F. And he would talk to me about the program. And there was no NA program in Philly back then. And so, long story short, when I got better, I started making AA. And they told me at Northeast Club, look, just don't talk about the drugs, just say you're an alcoholic, which I would have done anything. They were pretty nice to me. So there were some people in there that had children, adult children who needed to come in as well. So they got together and introduced us to each other. And I had met, that was through Jim S. I met his two sons, Mike and Danny S. And Roy P. as well, and then in September, Jim H. And there were some AA meetings that welcomed us. There was the Saints group that brought in Duncannon, and it didn't matter what you were struggling with. You could go there, and we were welcome. And but through Roy, we started NA in Philadelphia. And Jim can give you more of the details. It's hard to remember back all this time, but I know before Philly, we started at NA in Springfield, Delaware County, and then we actually started a meeting in Belmar, New Jersey. And then in '72, I think he said September '72. It was at 11th or 13th in Ruscombe, and then we also started one on the Boulevard there. I think it was like 9th in the Boulevard. So, long story short. So anyway, I left after 2.5 years to be a social drinker, and back in the roundhouse again, and. So in 1980, I came back, and I've been clean and sober since. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Jim. I'm an addict. She doesn't look like she was in the roundhouse. I want to start off by mentioning a few people who aren't here today for various reasons, and primarily women in NA. There were some real, pioneers in this program, and I just need to mention their name. Maria V, who is still with us, she's in Florida. Linda F, who we've been unable to contact. Lynne G, who's in Florida. Sharon, who had various last names, she's in Connecticut now. Literally, I'm aware of 3, maybe 4 or 5. If I missed any women, I think I got the early women, besides Maureen, of course. And typically I don't have notes or anything, but I just want to remember these people. And 2 brothers who aren't here today, Ray T, who lives in North Carolina, and Brian T, who's in New Jersey. That man is a saint to me. An absolute saint to me. I get chills just thinking about him, and when I saw that picture today, he's a saint. He took risks. He didn't have to allow NA. And even before that, putting drug addicts and alcoholics together was insane. Who would ever think that you could put people like that in treatment together and get successful outcomes? 2 other people I want to mention. NA in this area was slow to seep into the black community. Ray N., who's no longer with us, said to someone named Harvey D., geez, I think you should start a meeting. And the first black meeting was at Broad and Olney. It was probably down the street at Axe, but that was the first black meeting, as far as I know, in 1981. I had short trips to Synanon in California. If you don't know anything about Synanon, Google when you go home, or Google here. Synanon was the first therapeutic community in the country. I had a short stay in the second therapeutic community in the country, and that's Daytop Village, which was in Staten Island and also Manhattan. And I'm not sure of the dates. I'm thinking probably the late 60s. I found myself here in April 1971. And I never thought I could stop. I had no idea about recovery. There were some reasons why I came that really weren't honest reasons, but I came. And there was NA. And as I recall, it was in the Gersley building. And it is nothing like it is today. I'm going to tell a story that I seldom tell. Danny is aware of what I'm going to say. Believe it or not, I was the president of Narcotics Anonymous. Seriously. Any meeting at that time was more like a clubhouse meeting, and we had like car washes, and for no good reason, other than to have like and maybe they took us to see B.B. King at the Robin Hotel, and maybe that's where the money went. Well, anyway, the guy nominated me for president, and I don't think this guy really was in it for the best of reasons. I think he wanted me to like abscond with the money, and we were going like split, and I believe he actually did split. I didn't. I stayed on and went in the candidate program. The thing that's very important to me at the time, there were 4 of us who ended up with long-term recovery. Ralph S., who passed clean, Ed F., who passed clean, and I heard he may be here today, Frank H. I came here with a nickname, a street name, and I've never told anyone. Well, I've told very few people, I found it important for me to get beyond that persona of who. Delete that. She really, Dave's not happy that I said, even though it's my name. So I completed half of the candidate program, the halfway house program, and I hit the streets September 74. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to find a meeting. I looked in the phone book. There wasn't NA, there was AA, and I called the Northeast Club. There was a guy who answered the phone, thank God, Jim S. He said, you ready for this? He said, yes, I have my 2 sons who are in this, quote, new NA program, Danny and Mike S. And that night, and Roy P. And that night I went down to the Northeast Club. I met Maureen, I met Roy, I met Danny and Mike S. And Mike S. became my first sponsor. I got cured after a while, like Maureen. And I came, I crawled back in 72. And at that time, there were now 3 NA meetings. And the third meeting really isn't mentioned. I don't even know if it's the book. The first meeting was the 13th in Ruscombe. That was September of 1972. Roy T. started. A month later, he started 10th in the Boulevard. And I was in the area recently, and I drove past both those places. And to me, they're sacred areas, just like Eagleville is to me. The third meeting was at Friends Hospital. And I remember distinctly, I was in the meeting. We had a very large attendance that night. It was me, Ray T, and Marie P. And collection was probably 75 cents. And Roy P. said something that really, I can say pissed, I'm not going. Roy P. said something to me that really pissed me off. And Ray T. and I joke about this sometime. That was it. And I got up, I left, and I got cured again. And I crawled back in 74, in June of 74. And, you know, I I have just been so fortunate to have gotten into this program. I know there are other ways to get clean. I know there's like spontaneous recovery. People just stop. I know people can go to church, get a religion. I know that's possible. And I tried all of them. I tried every means except, when I finally decided to get clean. I think I was like Johnny Appleseed because one other thing, the first meeting in the Philadelphia area Maureen mentioned was in Springfield, Delaware County. And I remember distinctly, and I suspect Maureen remembers too, we were under surveillance. So in the readings that we have, we're under no surveillance at any time. In 1971, we were in surveillance. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're getting something out today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Dutch. I'm an addict. And I came here in 1971. I didn't stay, but I went through the Canada program, and then I got a job as cutting the grass on the lawn at Eagleville. That was my first job. The guy's name was Farmer John, and he kind of took me under. He woke me up every morning, and I felt safe here at Eagleville, and I had left Eagleville and went out, to do it my way, and I passed somebody on the street. There's certain areas where you go to cop, and he was there, and he just said, all he said was, "I'm holding." He didn't say any other words, and I had no defense against it. They came and got me at my house. My therapist, Louis, and he was like a janitor, Roy. They came, and I was hiding in my parents' closet. Tough guy, wasn't I? And they took me back to Eagleville, and I had like a second chance. And at this time, the first time that I was in Eagleville, I don't remember too much about any Narcotics Anonymous stuff. I remember people coming from another 12-step fellowship, and me not being able to relate to them. And they were older. And back then, everybody that was in NA was young. It was like everybody was in their 20s. I mean, we never thought about getting old. We never thought about. There was no rules. You dig what I'm saying? No rules. It was like the Wild West. Nobody told us how to have a meeting. Nobody told us how to do anything. The people that were predecessors were the ones that came out of this place here, Eagleville Hospital. And that guy over there, he went to court for me. I was facing 55 years. And he went... Murray, who was the head of therapy, went to court for me. My therapist went. That janitor went. And the guy who was Farmer John. They all went down to Delaware to my hearing. And I walked. They were having riots down in Delaware. And I was heard in the judge's chambers. And everybody was in there, and it was crowded. And he says, "I'm going to do this against my will." He says, "You're going to walk. But if you ever come back in front of me," he says, "you will do 55 years. And I kind of felt like I got my wings at Eagleville Hospital. I remember the guy, Ron. I was in a methadone clinic, and he said, "You want to go to Eagleville?" I says, "No, man, I'm fine. I'm on 160 milligrams, and I'm doing good." And that was the paley addiction clinic. And this, you know, he says, "They got girls there." I says, "I don't care. Don't you get it? I don't care about anything." I said, "I just want to come here and get my stuff." And it was like head down period. You know, like when you go in second grade, you take a nap at school. That's what it was like. You didn't have to go anyplace else. Anyhow, I got tired of him asking me. I came here. He dropped me off at the end of the road, and he says, "I'm going to give you some advice." And I said, "All right, what? Hit me." And he says, "Just be honest." And I walked away from him like, what? I mean, this is the difference between us and other 12-step fellowships. Everything we did was illegal. The getting and finding of ways and means to get more, everything was illegal. The substances that we took was illegal. But what happened is, even with everything being illegal, and knowing that we have the high initiation fee of any club in the world, we banded together. And it started from Eagleville Hospital. Make no joke about that, because I went to Fifth, to Broad and Duncannon. And I'll tell you why I kept going back. Maureen, you probably know her. Pepper. Her name was Pepper. And I kept going back to that meeting because of Pepper. Wasn't about steps, wasn't about any. It was, I wanted to see Pepper. And she was there every week. You know. I mean, that's my story. I'm not, you know, I don't know what all your stories are, but, you know, that was what got me to come back. Pepper. Nothing else. I don't want to hear nothing about God. I don't want to hear nothing. I wanted to see Pepper. That's it. You know, so, but what happened was, what I remember with knowing that when I went out and I had no defense against using, that we needed something of some kind of substance when we leave Eagleville Hospital. And the first meeting that I went to, I can tell you the 6 people that were there. One was Carl W. One was Kenny C. One was Rich M. One was Ralph S. And Jim B's brother, Bob. And I didn't know what to do. We had a book that was big. We had no idea what was going on. And we kind of still, because Eagleville, what we learned was therapy, the therapeutic community of one addict helping another. Well, that was everybody hollering at you and then telling you that they loved you. I got 2 minutes. It's this one? Oh, okay. All right. But anyhow, all right. I'm done. Where's Bono?
I don't have to lower this because you were up here, right? My name's Bill, and I'm an addict. And I'm absolutely in awe. I really am. What a turnout, man! I'm flabbergasted, really. You know what? What I remember the most, I don't remember the NA meetings here. I don't know if I was out to lunch. I was actually thrown out of here. But before I got thrown out, for some reason, I went to this canteen, and a lot of people have heard me talk about this before, but there was a canteen. It was like an information thing. People from the outside came and gave information about different things. And these two guys came, Bobby M. and Kenny C. And I was about to be thrown out, and I was wondering, what am I going to do now? Because, I had something wrong with me. The dope back then wasn't that good as a lot of people can testify to. But this addict was overdosing almost every time he used. And I remember Ed F. told me that there was just a thing that some people, their system couldn't handle it anymore. And I didn't do any more than anybody else, but I'm just saying what was happening to me. So here I am getting ready to be thrown out, and I shoot dope, I'm overdosing. I'm wondering, what am I going to do now? And I went to this canteen like a last-ditch effort, and these two guys were there talking about a new program called Narcotics Anonymous. And this was probably in about May of '72. And when they talked about this, I got just a real little ray of hope. And I went to a meeting, and it was down at the church at, what was it? The address? The church? Norristown.
Oh, 1208.
Yeah, 1208, okay. So I went to the meeting, and, the thing that piqued my interest was, Bob and Kenny had talked about some place on the outside where people were meeting and helping one another not to use. And that's what I wanted. But I went to the meeting. I amassed 45 days clean on the streets, and I couldn't get 2 hours before. And I got this bright idea one night that I was going to go to a bar where I used to drink and help a guy I knew there that could really use what I was getting in the program. So by myself, I went on a 12-step call in a bar where I used to drink. Now I'm a drug addict. I'm talking to this guy, and I looked better, the weight was back in the face and everything. And I'm talking to him, and one of my old friends walked by and put a little 7-ounce glass of beer in my hand. I drank it without thinking. I'm an addict. I'm not an alcoholic. And I had went to AA because, back in the early days, if you wanted to go to more than one meeting a week, you had to go to AA. And they said it was the first one to get you. Believe me, I found out what that meant. I was shooting dope that night, and I was on a methadone program 7 days later. 1 7-ounce beer. And after I was out there 2.5 weeks, I left my beautiful wife, 8 months pregnant, sitting in an apartment. I disappeared for 2.5 weeks after that beer. And I hit a really low bottom. I was homeless. I was on the street. It was November. I didn't even have, I sold my coat for a bag of dope, a leather coat. 2 bags of dope, excuse me. I would have sold it for 1 though. But anyway, I called. I was on a methadone program in Frankfurt, and I was in Norristown. I didn't know what to do, and I thought about the people at the Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And I called Rich M, and I said, Rich, I need help. He said, what are you willing to do? And I said, anything I have to. He said, that's what I've been waiting here. He took me to a meeting that night, and at that time, Pottstown was started, and it was up Pottstown. I met my first sponsor, Bob, and Joe K. In fact, I still talk to Joe K once in a while. And I started making meetings. I started making a lot of meetings, and I applied myself to this program. My sponsor helped me go through the steps. And then me and Rich started a meeting at Collegeville. Now, Dutch was talking about it the one time, thought about Collegeville, That's, me and Rich were always at Collegeville. And a woman back then who used to come to the meetings, Vincetta, she was very prominent in that group for a while. But I remember getting a bunch of people together way back when and say, you know what, we got to do something about working these steps. We don't have any kind of a step movement in the program. We started a step meeting. And if I remember correctly, it was at the Y in Norristown. It's a long time ago. And we met, and what we did was we took the A&A's 12 and 12, and we crossed out the word alcohol and wrote in drugs. And that's how we conducted our step meetings. And guess what? It helped. It helped. We were like the blind leading the blind. I remember I had Dutch speak at my home group for an anniversary. It was the 25th, and Dutch made a statement. He said, "I was an old timer in NA when I joined." Remember that? So I'm very blessed, guys. You know what? I could keep you here all night talking about the gratitude. My beautiful wife took me back, and she's still with me today. 3 of the best kids in the whole wide world. People that know my wife know what I'm talking about. My kids are phenomenal, and their spouses. I couldn't have handpicked spouses anymore. And of course, my 9 little ones, my puppies. And you know what? I'm Poppy. So I am more blessed than and I'm retired. I don't work anymore. So I'm living large, and it's all because of Narcotics Anonymous. And you know what? I've been clean since 72 November, okay? But I still need to be there. I get fed when I go to meetings. I absolutely get fed. And this addict needs to be fed. I need that. So, thank you.
I'll come back. I'm David, I'm an addict. Get rid of this. By the way, just a housekeeping matter, you don't have to have gone to Eagleville. This is about NA. Yeah, I'm sitting near someone who said, well, I went through Chit Chat. And I said, well, this is, you know, if you were exposed to NA, this is your time. How many of you have a letter that you wrote after you went to your first NA meeting, a letter that you wrote to your mother? I came in on a Friday. Jimmy already mentioned it. I saw him at the candy machine on Saturday morning, and I have to say that my recovery started right in front of that candy machine, because he started to tell me about his brother Bob. And Bob had 2.5 years, which was like a crazy amount of time, and he was involved in this upstart fellowship called Narcotics Anonymous. So I believe that Monday and Wednesday here on grounds were NA. We met in the canteen, and Tuesday and Thursday were AA. And so the first Monday I went to a meeting, and I wrote to my mother, had to go to NA. One of the speakers is a guy who works at the outpatient clinic, an ex-drug addict. He was a professional comedian and jazz musician before his addiction. I think he was padding his resume just a bit there. He spoke for a solid hour, and I didn't stop laughing once. Now, but think about that. I mean, I'm 3 days off the street and I'm laughing already. He has a style very much like Flip Wilson. So for the younger folks, ask some of the older folks. We'll tell you who Flip Wilson was. He actually used to entertain a drag, didn't he? That was one of his characters. You would have loved it. Now, why was I writing my mother a letter 3 days in rehab? Because I wanted some things from her. Probably some money. Any shirts in my belongings, a green vest, rubber insulated green boots. I don't know what I thought was going on up here. And here's the best part. Any old Playboys. I think the old juices were starting to flow already. But the first meeting, Jimmy actually got out to go to a meeting the week before I did. Bobby took him down to 13th and Ruskin, and Jimmy came back and said, you're going to love NA. It's just like AA, only it's addicts. And he said, this one gal shared, and I'm sure, even though I wasn't there, I know who it was, said that she went out shoplifting that week and she was really much better at it, that she was doing it clean. So the following week, Bobby takes Jimmy and I back down, and I walk in, it's basement meeting, candlelight, and there's the history of Philadelphia NA seated before me. And going around this topic meeting, and that gal puts her hands up and she goes, my name's, and I'm an addict. I hate all you MFers. I hate this effing program. Fuck you all. Sorry, I meant to use the initial there. And that really happened. And I thought, you know, I can fit in here. This just might be a place for me. You know, NA was small. I stayed here 6 months, and Bobby was just so good about getting us out and getting us involved. And he really believed in Narcotics Anonymous. And Bobby was a member of my home group before he died. And we gave him his medallion on his deathbed. And he loved this fellowship to the very end. And by the way, the meeting today is sponsored by his home group and the home group I'm part of, called Surrender to Win. It's been an incredible journey. And when you go to world conventions in NA or regional conventions and they do countdowns, you get some 50-year guys and gals from California. They're a little slow getting up like Bill was here today. And then there's a gap, and then they start hitting around what would now be like 45, and you look and, it's so-and-so from Philly, and that's, we have a really strong, long-standing fellowship of which I'm extremely grateful. It was so much a part of my life and continues to be. So with that, anybody else in the 69 to 74 year range? Okay, well, why don't we now jump to 75 to 80? And if your first exposure, it doesn't have to be your clean day. Come on up.
Hi, I didn't know we were speaking today, but I just thought I was coming up and seeing some old friends. My name's Noelle, and I came to Narcotics Anonymous March 22nd, 1975, and my brother Jimmy F., some of you remember him, he had 4 years clean. He's still clean today. He took me to Narcotics Anonymous that day. And at the time, my brother asked me if I could stay clean for just that day. It was kind of like an intervention before we had interventions. And he showed up really early in the morning, and my mother and my other brother, had gotten a hold of him and said, you have to do something about Noelle. And so he, because he was clean, he showed up. And he was smart enough to know to show up really early. And, I was just trying to figure out, what I did the night before. And he asked me if I could stay clean that day. And I said, sure. I was still high. And so that was an easy yes. And I did. And, he introduced me to some of his friends. Linda F., Jimmy mentioned, and Roy, Pat M., and there was just a bunch of them that day that I met, and they were all happy, and they were nothing like me, and I was really struggling to even relate to these people because they were just clean, and I wasn't, and so he asked me if I would go to a movie that night, and he took me to 10th and the Boulevard. It was an NA meeting. I said yes to the movie. I didn't realize I was going to an NA meeting to see a movie called Chalk Talk. And if anybody was around back then, Chalk Talk was a movie that was done by Father Martin. And he was a pioneer in alcoholism. And, they were all excited, to have this movie. And, it was like, the old movies you saw in the church. It was like, but everybody was real excited about that. And I remember thinking, I know all of that, and I really so related to that. And the next day, people showed up right away. I was very lucky because my brother was clean, and so people really took a hold of me, and there was like a task force assigned by my brother, and that was getting me to NA meetings. And at the time, we had an NA meeting every night, and I'm a little nervous standing up here. I don't know why. I know all of you guys pretty much, but I always get nervous when I speak, and I guess for me that's because I want to get to my truth, my core truth, and what things were for me. But anyway, I found an old meeting list when they said people were going to come up here, and I wanted to mention the meetings at the time I came in. And, it was the Northeast group. That was my home group. That was Byberry State Hospital. There was the Oakland group. There was Lansdale, Logan group. Norristown, 13th and Ruscombe, South Philly Group, Collegeville, Southampton, Mount Penn, and Doylestown Group. And we went to all those meetings. And, this guy Kenny would pick me up and take me to a meeting and sometimes empty the car and go get more guys and take them to the same meeting, And we would just travel around the city. And we went to any lengths to get to NA meetings. But during the day, I went to AA clubhouses to detox. And I went every day, and people drove me, or I hitchhiked. Back then you could hitchhike everywhere, and we hitchhiked to meetings and whatever. And that was my way of transportation for many years. But I detoxed in these clubhouses, and I'm forever grateful to that other fellowship for that time I sat there, and they let me be sick in their space. And we went to meetings wherever we could, and at the time there were no meetings in New Jersey, and we would take over AA clubhouses as well. And Linda F was a friend of mine in high school, and so the connector to Eagleville was her dad, and Dick F and Roy P and Linda were a couple at the time, and they shared their home with me, and I eventually wound up moving in with Roy and living with Roy when he was moved on to Sharon. So it was like there were different crazy times. We were crazy clean back then. We did whatever it took to stay clean, but we also did all kinds of crazy stuff, And but it was an awesome time in recovery, because the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. And I say that because we didn't have the literature. We had the white book, and that's a really powerful little book. If you ever want to share it with a newcomer, that's the way in. And all the key information that we need is right there. And it's a simple program for complicated people. And I'm so grateful to Narcotics Anonymous. I want to tell you that, last year I went to Thailand to a convention in Bangkok. And for me to see all these countries represented, CJ was there, and it was just awesome to see the amount of countries that we have infiltrated, and that speak all the same language. It's why it's so important that we use Narcotics Anonymous approved literature. And I know there's some people that want to use all kinds of stuff, but what I saw the language being the same. I saw the message being the same. And that is pretty incredible when you're looking at, people from Iran and people from, India and different countries all speaking the same language, the same message that brings us in here. And there's nothing more powerful than that therapeutic hug that we give each other when they walk in the door to me. It is grounding, it is godly, it is our connector, and it connects us to humanity. And we are so disconnected. I was so disconnected when I came into Narcotics Anonymous, and that hug was something so far. I was grounded. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pete H. I was introduced to NA I was actually a judge, had meetings in his courtroom. I'd hurt a policeman bad in a blackout, So part of my thing was I had to go to meetings in his courtroom, and they did the chalk talk, It was the Mother Fellowship, and then, but there were some people there who took me out and started taking me to NA meetings. But I would go to the meetings. I would like sitting outside the courthouse where the meetings were in his courtroom, and I would shoot dope in the parking lot of the courthouse. I was in my jugular veins. I was, I just didn't know how to stop, and so I didn't stop for another year. And then I came up here, and I was sleeping on a park bench down in McPherson Square. And I'd come home from the Marine Corps with a habit in 1974. I was in from like 69 to 74, and I just started using the whole time, and was in always in one of the brigs, wherever I was stationed. And but then I came here, and I had a syringe in my back pocket. I got out of Kensington Detox. It was the second time I was in there. I'd been on methadone for 6 years prior to that. And I went outside that meeting where the old admissions were after they finally got me admitted, and I took it and I threw it in the trash can. And I just looked up and I said, please God, in Jesus' name, help me stay clean. And I started to, that was it. July 7th, 1981 was my clean date. And I've just never had to go back, thank God, because of this place. This place had meetings. This was established then, thank God, by these guys. They were people bringing meetings in here. And so I had that advantage, And I like I said, I met some people here. They were going to put me out of here in about 45 days. They said, go talk to this dope fiend, Dennis. He's from South Philly, And so the day before they were going to discharge me, because I had spoken to him, the day before they were going to discharge me, somebody left AMA. And Dennis said, why don't we give the bed, told Mary Ivan, why don't we give the bed to that kid that came over here, And so they did. They gave me the bed. And I stayed here for another 6 months. I was 7.5 months, and I went to a halfway house. Eagleville sponsored one in Norristown. I went there for another 6 months. And I am a real example of long-term treatment working. I would wish that they would do that. They didn't put me on methadone. They didn't put me on, they really gave me long-term treatment that saved my life. And this fellowship, I can't even explain it to you how much it's meant to me in my life. Like Billy was saying, my sponsor, there's, I have 5 kids, 5, grandkids. I'm going to a party at 3:30 for my one son. It's just like I tell guys at the prisons all the time. I've been doing the prisons with Kurt for about 36 years. I tell them, I say, I wouldn't trade my life with Bill Gates. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that. I would not trade my life with Bill Gates. And, I don't have any of those things, but I have it really in here, and this is where it all started for me, I'm telling you. This is where it started. This is where I opened up. When I came here, it was like Disneyland to me. Where I grew up, like in Kensington and the East Falls projects and Abbotsford projects, it was nothing like this place. And the only time I ever seen anything like it, when I was in the Marine Corps for a while, I was in California, and we used to go to Disneyland, when we'd have passes on the weekends. And that was because it was safe, right? Somebody mentioned it being safe here. It really was a safe place. I'd never been in a safe place. Hattie, Dennis, those people that saved my life. My friend Nunzio, who used to take me to the mall, and then he would just leave me. He like ADD or something. He would take me there and go, Nuns, how am I going to get home? He said, that's how you get to meet people. Don't get you home. And he would just leave me there. When I was in the halfway house in Norristown, he just would leave, and then I really had to find my way home, and I felt like a wart on the end of somebody's nose, I couldn't sit with people. I couldn't be in the diner with people. I felt terrible. This keeps thinking in my head, get me back to the halfway house. Get me back to the halfway house, And then, it changes, man, and your life gets good, and that's all. If you come to NA, if you're just, struggling here, keep coming. Just keep coming until the miracle happens. I hear it all the time. Thanks.
Okay, just briefly, Dwayne is going to come up next, but we're going to take a break. I don't like to pass a basket when somebody's speaking, so we are self-supporting through our own contributions. And we're going to make a contribution to Eagleville for providing the room for us today, and the cake, coffee, soft drinks, and what have you. So the quicker that goes around, the quicker we can get going. Okay. Memo to whoever is going to organize the 60th, do not use the word break. For any reason. I had anticipated a basket quietly going around, people getting up quietly for a cup of coffee. It's good. Everybody's getting some hugs and getting to know each other again. That's cool. We're out of sugar. A call has been made that there are 200 addicts up in the patient care building without sugar. Could get ugly. Okay, we're gonna pick it it up, and we were in the midst of the 75 to 79 year folks, and there's a bunch. So Dwayne was there. He is. Dwayne was next in line. Thank you.
I'm short of breath, so I'm trying to do this quick. I'm Dwayne S. and I'm an addict. I actually came to Eagleville June 9th, 1975. But I was introduced to NA through Chester County Farms. I was in Chester County Farms and I was trying to make my way to the dining room to make a hookup with the guy that worked in one of the guys that worked there. And it just so happened there was a Saturday morning, there was a panel of guys sitting up there, and the guard asked me where I was going, and I said, he said, oh, you going in there with the addicts? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I went in and my thinking thinks it was, there's a bunch of, like 3 white guys, and they all looked like they were 6 foot tall. And, you know, no, I told them I didn't want what they had, but they told me that if you ever need us, look us up. And I remembered that. When I got to Eagleville, the sheriffs dropped me off from Chester County Farm, and one of the first things somebody mentioned earlier, they used to have 2, what we call now, I guess, H&I meetings on the ground. And each group had to take a day and be like the chaperones for that meeting, had to set it up and stuff like that. And I remember I got the chance to do that for the NA, and I don't know, for some reason, I felt, it made me feel good. So that became, I guess, my hope to NA. And it was new, and it was unorganized, and it wasn't like the other fellowship, you know. And I guess I wanted, that fit my personality. So when I got out, I got in a little trouble with gambling with some of the guys that were in there, and started some of my old behaviors again, like stealing, you know, and spending my money foolishly and stuff like that. And I needed something different. So I started going to NA meetings around Norristown, and I got involved with service. They said they needed help, and they let me chair meetings, set up meetings. I went to area, and they let me be the literature person. And, you know, so they pulled me in, and I liked that. And I stayed around a long time doing that. I also had a couple other reasons. I remember I had a car. I was one of the few people that had a car and a bank account, and I had a young lady that had a phone. And so, you know, I had all the trappings, I think, for me. And one thing about chairing meetings, I got to pick the speakers. And I actually like to pick the young ladies to speak, and because I'd come pick them up, and we'd go have coffee, and you know, they'd speak at the meeting, and but anyway, you know, there's all kinds of reasons to keep coming back, but they kept me coming back, and eventually I got trapped in that too. But you know, I stayed around the program for pretty much like an 8-year stretch. And I got caught up in other addictions. And I got caught up in gambling. And I found out the gambling basically the same as drug use. You know, it took me the same way. I became irresponsible, unemployable, derelict, and all that stuff. And then I ended up picking up drugs. So it wasn't, how you say, it wasn't that I had to pick up drugs. I wasn't jonesing for them, but that was my, I guess, way of punishing me. You know, and so I did that, and you know, I did it like 3 times in the last 44 years. You know, I did a long time, clean time now. But you know, I look back now and I realize that was part of my behavior. That was part of my life even before I got here, that I always had
a certain point in life where I just say, screw it, and do something harmful to myself, even though I knew it was harmful. But I don't know, growing up is tough. But one part I liked about this fellowship and this program was that they always said, keep coming back, and come back no matter what. The main thing is not, the shame isn't in using, the shame is in not coming back. And that's, I guess, my story. That's what I have to give, to offer to anybody that's in it. Just keep coming back no matter what. It's just saying, even if your Google eyes fall off, put them in a wheelbarrow and bring them back to the meeting. And so, but the program, and I have other things. If I look back over my life, all my successes and all my good times were basically in this fellowship. I kind of, had opportunities to, I guess, go back and reunite with my family, and for some reason, I didn't need them anymore. I found what I needed in these rooms, not so much in the room, but in the people, in the fellowship. Sense of being belong to something and having a purpose. And I think that's what it is, and the purpose is to share my experience, strength, and hope. Share what I got, and that's all I got, and it's good enough. And so, I keep coming back. Eagleville was, to me, Eagleville was where NA got the hug, because I remember we used to practice, they used to tell you how to hug in here. You hug a guy, you don't pat him on the back and beat him up. You hug him, you pull him in your chest, wrap your arms around him, and you hold him. And the same way with women, don't be afraid to hug women. But, a hug is a hug, and it's a good feeling. And I remember even going to California in '85, and they were still basically shaking hands. So I do believe that the hug is from this area. And it's a big part of NA today all over the world is the NA hub. But I'm here, and thanks for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I'm an addict. And in 1977, I was dating a young lady, and she happened to be Bobby Mack's niece. And he 12-stepped me. And it was kind of sneaky, I got invited over for dinner. And he had the pamphlets waiting for me, the little white book. And, at 17, I didn't have a problem. And almost 20 years to the day, I walk into a meeting after leaving this facility. And who's in the meeting? And sitting there, and he's rocking an empty chair saying, "Kid, I've been waiting 20 years for this." And he remembered. And that was my beginning, and it saved my life, and that's all I have.
Hey, family. I'm original. They were waiting. I was going to chicken out. I started back in Harrisburg. I had just had my daughter, January 14th, 1972. And I was going to give her up for adoption because my mother already had my son, and I didn't want to burden my mother by giving her another responsibility. And she was a single mother. And it started on there in Harrisburg. You had the doctor, and I was on methadone at that time. So I had made a decision that I wanted to get off of methadone and start a new way. Plus, I had a little help from the legal system because my mother went to the assistant district attorney and demanded that he help me. So we walked around trying to find different places for me to go. And I said that if I stay in Harrisburg, then I'm not going to stay clean. I would have all the intention, but I know once I walk out the door and start walking down the street, something would draw me, and I hadn't became powerful enough to resist that. So I had to say that I would come to someplace else. So going to this doctor who was giving out the methadone, who was the family doctor in the community, he said, okay, I have a place for you to go. At that time, as I said, I was giving my daughter up for adoption, so I thought that I was going to get dosed and sign papers to sign my daughter off into the foster care. To my surprise, my mother was there, standing there, and she signed and said no, that she would take my daughter, and that the doctor, Dr. Nichols, got me into Eagleville. So I had to travel from Harrisburg to Eagleville. Now that's a foreign, Eagleville is a foreign country to me. I had no idea where I was going. And when I was scheduled to catch this bus to come to Eagleville, my mother was laying on the couch and she had her back turned. And I was saying, Mother, I'm leaving, and she never moved. So to this day, as I look back, it's something in the gospel that where it says that all this sin was happening in this town, and someone was praying to the Creator that if you allow a certain amount of people to go, then I wouldn't destroy it. So it came down to the point to where my mother said to whoever she was praying to, that if you save my daughter, then I will be forevermore grateful. And the message was, once I save Grace, you cannot look back and help. You have to let her go and do it all by herself. So I remember getting on the bus and getting off, and I had to walk down from wherever they let me off at the road up there. And that was one of the longest walks that I ever had in my life. And this is totally different. I have no idea what this is right here now compared to 1972, which was nothing but mud, dirt, grass, and all that good stuff. It was the rich stuff. Anyway, I said I was going to do 2 minutes. So I came here February 27th, 1972, not knowing anything about what I needed to do. I was totally unknowledgeable of what was needed in order to stay clean. So with them Eagleville starting different meetings in the building here, and that was part of the stipulation, as in treatment, that you had to go to anything and everything that was going. So I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to stand here today, 2019, and saying that this soil, this place, helped me to understand what it was all about in reference to loving myself. I thank you for listening to me at this particular time. Thank you.
I'm George, I'm an addict. Moose has some expectations. He sold a cake, and so he's not sitting too well right now. But I have some help here that are watching him. I got clean February 27, 1977. My first NA meeting was in Today Outpatient that Dutch had started. I didn't know I was going to an NA meeting. A guy took me there, and it was, I think at the time, it was the only meeting in Bucks County. It was March 77. First time I felt at home anywhere. I knew, that this was right, but at the same time, I wasn't looking to get clean. I wasn't basically I was looking for a mental institution, and that's, I hallucinated my first 40 days clean, and that's what I thought I had done permanent damage. But I wound up at that meeting. I remember feeling home, and I went through the outpatient program there. They didn't recommend us going to meetings or anything like that. I did, though, attend, I was listening to some of the meetings that people were talking about. I went to the Collegeville meeting, I went to Lansdale. I think Lansdale was Monday night. Collegeville was Thursday night. I went to Friday night in Oxford Circle. Those were all meetings in early recovery that I went to. I didn't go to the Byberry meeting though, because I was afraid that if I checked in, I wouldn't check out. And I had some friends that were telling me that it was a really good meeting, and I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I didn't really get serious with NA until I until I completed outpatient, and what I found is like, what do I do now? Someone had suggested that we start a meeting. We started it on Mill Street in Bristol in '79, and I was looking. Thank God I saw that book there, because I spent months looking for intergroup. And if you look at I think 76 or 77, it stopped being intergroup and became area service. But I was trying to find out how I could get the group that we started part of Narcotics Anonymous, and eventually we wound up coming to Norristown. And I'd seen Bill, who spoke earlier. He was the area chair, and I think Ray T. might have been the previous one. Maggie was the secretary, and that was like joining NA officially. I wound up in there. I wound up becoming a public relations chairperson. That was my first real service commitment to Narcotics Anonymous. But around that time, we started a couple other groups that developed. Somebody talked about the AA 12 and 12. Our third meeting that got started was a step meeting, and we had the AA 12 and 12. We doctored it up, we crossed it out, put Narcotics Anonymous on it. Where it said alcohol, we put drugs, and that was. We were also, and this is in Lower Bucks. The local rehabs there were, I think it was 18 and younger. So there wasn't anybody over 21 that was in our area, that was in our group. And there's 4 guys today that have been clean 39 years that attended those meetings for the first time. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know about step work. We would actually give feedback if you were chairing or speaking and you shared. I got to tell you what you needed to do, and so did the guy next to me. We had no idea what we were doing, but that didn't stop us. But that was because that was therapy. That's all that we knew, And I don't know that disappeared somewhere, it just overnight. It was like that. It was gone, But I remember that distinctly, and I remember the hugs. It was always hugs from day one, NA changed, and I mentioned we had that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on speaking here, and I was looking, who's going to speak? I wonder, but so here I am. But we had, our experience was that we were 21 and younger, and there was a guy that came in, he was about 23 years old. That means I get 2 minutes? Yes. Okay. And I remember our experience was that there wasn't any older people in there, and we wondered if this guy was seriously going to make it, because he might have been too old to get NA. But that's where we were at. It wasn't until the East Coast Convention, wasn't until we found out that we weren't supposed to use the AA 12 and 12 that we got involved with, some of the writing in the basic text, and we got involved with the East Coast Convention, and we got involved with the regions being formed, and all that stuff brought in a lot of new knowledge from a lot of different places, and we started learning what NA was. I remember when people would get involved, people would ask me, who was your sponsor? And I would look at them and I go, I've been clean 3 years. That would be my answer, and they would look at me like, what does that mean? What step are you on? All of them. I got clean. But the freedom that came from being a part of this, and this is just amazing, and I really get to see a lot of people that have you know, what they done with NA made it possible for when I got here that there was something here, and you know, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you.
This girl was in my first meeting, my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. A woman over there took me by the hand because I didn't want to go in. And she raised her hand and said, "This woman has 6 months clean today." That hooked me. That hooked me. I was in a hospital down the street. She was too humble or scared to say it herself, but that hooked me. That made me say, wow, 6 months clean. And she doesn't live in a hospital? If she, well, that was my thing. I'm Sharon, I'm definitely an addict. I'll try to do 2 minutes so Mary can have the other 5. No, stay here with me, I'm scared. Okay. So she was in my first meeting, and I hope she'll be in my last meeting. Anyway, I was in a hospital down the street. All these people that had gotten clean in Eagleville came in and had a meeting there. And I was like, where's this Eagleville place? They're like up the road, and they're trying to do the same thing here that we're doing there. I had been, from 69 to 78, I had been detoxed every year from opiates. And as soon as I got out of wherever I went, I'd shoot dope again. As that person said, I walked down the street, and I didn't know what else to do besides go cop. So I was in this hospital probably April of 78. And the shrink comes in and says to me, I think after we detox you, you should think about going to this place where they're starting a program. And he said it was modeled after Eagleville. And I said, I've been in this place, that place. I'm so sick of people sitting in circles yelling at me, making me sit on chairs, wear signs, and not be allowed to talk. And he said, no, this is different. They have these meetings where people just like you are coming in and telling how they're doing it on the street, how they're staying off drugs, living outside of a treatment center. He never said it was called Narcotics Anonymous. He just said they're helping people getting out, stay clean. And I said, all right, that fast I went. And I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired. When I seen her take me by the hand, show me that love, and her sitting there like 6 months glowing in a meeting, 6 months without drugs, Narcotics Anonymous, it saved my life, it gave me a life. So this time, 41 years ago, I was in a nut house because I had again did the same harm to myself that I constantly did. And these people from Narcotics Anonymous, all because that little white book that came to Eagleville came in and saved my life. And I have the best life. I worked my ass off for 30-something years, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, went back to school. Now I'm retired, and my life is a vacation. My life is kayaking, beach, listening to music outside, making meetings, and helping the newcomer. So here's my girl, Mary.
Okay, my name's Mary. Hi, Lynne. I love Narcotics Anonymous. It's so fucking amazing. Very similar to get here. Oh my God. Okay, so, all right, so I'm from New Jersey, all right? And I did everything you could possibly do, you know, drug-wise, and I OD'd a lot. My last OD, I was in Trenton. And I don't remember, you know, of course, anything, but I was found in a stairwell across from the train station by a mentally disabled guy. So they called 911, and friends of mine that are nurses now said, Mary, you were brain dead. So anyway, I was in the hospital. From there, tubes and everything. I woke up, because God has a plan, right? So I woke up, from there they sent me to Trenton State Hospital. This is 1976. Okay, the only thing I knew about, I never knew anybody that used drugs and stayed clean afterwards or whatever. Nobody. I knew one guy, he went to narco because he killed a bunch of people in a car accident. And in narco, they used to let you have Valium, and you could do any as long as you didn't shoot that. But anyway, so I go from the hospital to paddy wagon, takes me to Trenton State Hospital. I'm in Trenton State Hospital, they tell me they're going to detox me. No message of recovery or anything like that. So then, Trenton State Hospital, they're like, well, we have these options. They send me, they sent me to Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania had it going on. And to Pottstown, from the state hospital I went to Carrier Clinic, which is like, movie star type, right? Still, they sent us to a meeting, and a girl was up there talking about blackouts, and I could relate a little bit, because I was an alcoholic too. And but nothing, I still didn't get it. So from there, I went to Pottstown, to a halfway house. Again, intense therapy, screaming and hollering at you, all kinds of shit, right? I stayed clean for a couple months. I got kicked out of there for something. And then I hooked up with a guy in detox. He was adorable. And a couple months later, I'm shooting dope again. I'm living in Norristown, Main and Noble, had an apartment. At that time, too, check this out. They used to come to your rehabs, and all these, back then, they used to have grants for smart people. Found out I was really smart. Who fucking knew? I didn't know I was smart, right? So they got me scholarships to college and all this stuff, but I'm shooting dope, okay? Anyway, I started college, and I'm living at Main and Noble, and I'm living with this crazy man, and my brother dies. My brother was my family. He overdoses on barbs and alcohol. So my family comes and gets me, yada yada. I made a pact to him to not use. So I hook up with Eagleville Outpatient, okay? This is the gospel truth. I'm hooked up with Eagleville Outpatient. My one counselor is nodding, and when he's not nodding, he's hitting on me, okay? I'm not gonna say his name. And then they switched me to another counselor, and he was just as crazy. And then my brother died. This guy's the guy I'm living with is beating the shit out of me. And I go back to Eagleville Outpatient. Lo and behold, God has a plan. They switched my counselor to Vincent. Okay, Vincent says, I don't care about your brother. I don't care about your boyfriend. You need to go to meetings. So I'm like, fuck, I don't want to go to meetings, whatever. So I go to this meeting, and I go to the meeting, and I find my first friend. Now, your friends in your addiction, they're screwing your boyfriend, they're taking your money, they're fucking you over. And I meet my first friend, Paula. She's still my friend today. And it changed everything. I thought, I didn't want to be here. I had a chip on my shoulder. I didn't understand about, one day, I never heard the message, one day at a time, one addict helping another, all these things. And, but I kept coming back. I didn't want to be here, but I kept coming back. My life is amazing today. My friends are amazing. I could, like somebody said about Gates, better than that. My life is so much better than that. And I slept ready rolled for like a year. I was crazy. Just even not with the insanity and everything. Just keep coming back. It's a wonderful program. Thank you.
I'm an addict. My name's Paula. I'm the other Paula. There is another Paula. I'm the other Paula. It's such a great turnout today. I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. I was introduced to the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous in 1977 from Philadelphia. I don't remember how I got to Norristown, to Main and Swede, but that corner, Main and Swede, is so significant because I had to wait for the van, the white van, to come and pick me up. They were going to give me a ride. You walked that dusty, but I got a ride from Main and Swede to the sprawling ground, and it isn't anything like it was. I felt like I was in the country at a country club. I couldn't believe it that this was going to be the place that was going to introduce me to what I now know is unconditional love, and put people in my life that I didn't know that they were going to be able to help me. But before that, I just need to give a shout out to St. Luke's Hospital for taking me in 1 million times and detoxing me. And it was a time when there was, the dope was so good. I just, after a few days, I wasn't detoxed enough. They let me drink the bug juice and eat all the sugar I needed. And Reds Peterson made the referral here so I could get here. And that I didn't even realize till long after I got here. Then I met you know, people like Kurt and Mary and Dan, and I don't want to forget people's names, but the fellowship. So long, you know, I was an alcoholic and an addict. That's the way we identified ourselves. I stayed here in treatment, which to me is a luxury that women were allowed to be in treatment. People were allowed to be in treatment for 9 months. And that's a gestation period. It's just like, who paid for that? That's unbelievable. But I don't want to forget about the reservation. I always talk about the reservation I had. And that was, I was just going to use one more time. And one more time lasted from 1977 to 1985. But in between that, when I was at Muncie, there were meetings being brought in from H&I. There were people in Williamsport, people were at White Deer Run. So I just want to mention these institutions, and when I came back, and that I didn't really know, Sharon said, I don't remember when I got clean, neither do I, but that was the first honest decision I made based on that love. Never forgot that love. Patty and Joe, people worked here, so it was incestuous in a way because they worked here, but they took us to meetings. We had a meeting still have the meeting at Sunday night in the bowl. We beat pillows, so forth and so on. But they took us to meetings. We went wherever. We went to AA meetings. We were clean and sober. And then came back to the convention. What was the name of the convention in 1985? Not One Life to Live, that's a soap opera. But it was, and I came up the escalator, it was something out of Rain Man. I knew exactly where to go. A guy, you know, that, I don't know why he wanted to hit on me. I wasn't even, what was it?
Step Up to Recovery.
Step Up to Recovery. And it was at the Wyndham downtown. And all those people I met in 1977, some of them who had Dwayne and Mary came to 12-step me, all those people were there. Bobby was there. And that was the beginning of what I now know is this journey that staying clean must come first. You know, that it maybe, I don't know that I agree with it's not where we were, the counts, but where we are going, but I know how important it is to me today. Thanks.
I'm an addict by the name of Al. Is this awesome or what? My clean date is September 25th, 1979. I used to say when I found Narcotics Anonymous, I think it was what I've been saying more recently is that when Narcotics Anonymous found me, because it's probably a more accurate statement. Because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was lucky enough to float into a meeting that George had started on Friendly Mill Street in Bristol, PA. In the first week of October, I was, maybe 7 days clean, and that's when Narcotics Anonymous found me. I camped out at the AA clubhouse, quite a bit because I knew when I was there I was safe. That they would kick me out at the end of the night, 11 o'clock. It was sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning on a weekend. They kicked me out. The coffee was well packed away. The donuts were gone, and it was time for you to go home, Sonny. And but what happened was that we just by attrition, we started more and more Narcotics Anonymous meetings because we knew that that's kind of where we belonged. And eventually we had 7, NA meetings in Bucks County. We started to travel a bit. We went to the first East Coast Convention when I had about 6 months. And it was quite eye-opening because there was a dude there from Atlanta. His name was Bo, and there was this other dude from, he said Wolf Creek, Oregon, I believe. His name was Greg. And they were working on the development of the basic text. Up until that time, you've heard people say that we were using the AA Big Book or the 12 and 12 and crossing out alcohol and replacing it with drugs. I mean, that was our literature. We had the little white book and a few pamphlets. And a lot of us got involved with that process, from that point forward. And kind of actually saw it through its fruition, and when the basic text got approved in 1983, I believe, at the World Service Conference. But we were in this workshop in in Memphis, Tennessee in November '82, and our friends, they were asking, they needed a place to host a workshop to do the story section and to work on the editing of the story section for the basic text. Our good friend Teresa raised her hand and said, we can do it at their house. It was like me and George, where George and I lived, a farmhouse in Ivyland, which is, maybe about an hour from here. And we had that workshop there in a very snowy. I mean, we went to pick people up at the airport in a Toyota Corolla, and it was amazing that we made it back because it was, there was snow, snow up to the rails on the Corolla. But and people, the farmhouse is probably about the square footage of this area right here. So there's people sleeping in the bathtub, in the closets, whatever the case may be. But we worked on the editing, the story section, and then it was shortly after that that the basic text went to the World Service Conference that next year for approval, and it was approved. Was in fact approved. I was at one of those conferences in Miami where I met Bobby B, and his lovely wife is here today with us, and it's nice to have her here. He passed away a few years ago, and he was very instrumental in the, Elwood shaking his head. Elwood was a very good friend of his, but he was very instrumental in the development of Narcotics Anonymous in and around the greater Philadelphia region and even beyond. There's so many people sitting in this room that were involved in development of Narcotics Anonymous way beyond Philadelphia. Certainly in the Philadelphia region. I've had the luxury over the last few years of traveling, like Noel was talking about us being in Thailand last year, traveling I've been in maybe 9 countries in the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm here to tell you that there's places where NA is still as underdeveloped as people that were the first people that got up here and spoke, are. There's 3 meetings in the country of Morocco. There's 31 million people there. Jim started NA in Iceland 35 years ago. There's 7 NA meetings a week in Iceland right now. They're all in the same building with 8 other fellowships. You want to talk about a mixed message? That's a pretty mixed message. They just got the basic text in Icelandic 3 years ago. So we're incredibly fortunate with what we have here. Because NA in other areas is as underdeveloped as it was when the first people that got up here today spoke about it. But we're growing and we need to grow. There's people dying right outside these doors here, right? So we still have a long ways to go. But this is an awesome event. I tell people at my anniversary every year that without you guys, there's a lot of people in this room that are the best friends that I've ever had, will ever have. You all know who you are, and thanks for being here for me. And I'd be nothing without you. Thank you.
I'm a grateful recovering addict named Rick. Hi, everybody. First of all, I got to get one thing off my chest. I am so sick of going to a meeting saying, we were here when the little white book was here. And they remember when the little white book was here. And I am so grateful for this meeting. I want to get up at those meetings and I want to tear their head off like you do not know what the white book meant to us. I heard people describing, scratching out Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm very grateful. The first thing I want to say is I'm 59 years old. And it's amazing. I came in 1978, and I remember it was April because I remember I went to a Chaka Khan concert, and I was out of my mind, and next thing I know, I was in Building 16 in Norristown State Hospital. And NA and AA didn't mean nothing to me because I thought I was recovering from being mentally and constitutionally inconscious to being clean. I couldn't even say it right. But I thought I was recovering from mental illness. And I felt fortunate to hang on people's coattails like Kurt and David and where's Fred? Oh my God. And just different people in here. And Dwayne was my sponsor. I don't know if he was chosen or I chose him, but I think because we kind of like looked alike or something, he was my sponsor. He came to meetings and got me every day that there was a meeting. And there was a meeting in Norristown State Hospital. It was in Building 1. And I used to swear to God I was saying this as a metaphor of my life and what made me me in Narcotics Anonymous. And I used to say that I just had my head on the desk or a table and I could hear people sharing and talking. And I thought that was just something I said because I had been on a whole bunch of medication. Came from the street, I understood now what a psychotic break was because I really did have one. I was 19 years old. Next thing I know, I was here, and then I was there, then I was here, and I broke out in all these other places. And then the meeting said that they were having a 40th year anniversary. Building 1 of Norristown State Hospital said they were celebrating 40 years of Narcotics Anonymous. And my mouth dropped open. I said, oh, wow. That was no metaphor. That was me in that building, being a patient, in that room, a meeting that H&I brought there, with my head on the table, and me hearing people share. It was no metaphor. It was real. And I was so grateful because this meeting is like showing me who I was, where I came from, and where I'm going, because I haven't spoken Narcotics Anonymous meeting maybe 5 times in my whole life. I've been here since 1978, in and out a couple times. That's neither here nor there. But I'm very grateful for this program, for you people, for my life, and man, this is like the beginning for me again, because this is awesome. I'm really treasuring this moment. There's something that's eluding me about Norristown State Hospital that I wanted to share, but I'm just very grateful to be here. This event, it will stick in my memory for a long time, and thanks for letting me share.
All right, well, it's 3 o'clock, and we have to wind it up. It's been an incredible event. Thank you all for supporting this. We have far more people here than we did for the 40th. Who's coming back for the 60th? Okay. If for any reason I'm not here, I'll be here in spirit. And don't let me hear those cell phones going off. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to close it with the Serenity Prayer, and I think I'd like Elwood to lead us in that. As far as cake, could we have 2 volunteers, 1 on each cake, to cut it up? And Moose is first in line, definitely. Moose gets cake. So we'll pass out some cake, give out some hugs, and we'll see you in 10 years, if not before.